bumps up, but for the last 2 years, we had a decrease in EAV. So there's been decrease for 2 years straight in a row. We have no idea what EAV would be for next year.
Next year's the triennial, you said?
Yes, 2011 is triennial year. This is the history of new property. And last year for 2010, we have about 5.16 million in new EAV, mostly from the village center in Burridge. And new property represents new dollars for district, as I alluded to in the beginning. So why am I talking about CPI, EAV, new growth, and so on? And that's because of the calculation of the limiting tax rate. When we levy, I don't levy on the tax rate. I levy a certain amount. It's dollar amount. But then, when your tax bill comes, it's the tax rate that's most important to everyone. And the tax rate the calculation of the tax rate in simplified form is the previous year's aggregate extension. For Pleasantdale, our aggregate extension last year for 2010 was 9.86 million. CPI, we know it will be 1.5. The two unknown factors are the EAV and the new growth. And that's why we balloon the levy. Okay? In ballooning the levy, as I'm going to mention in October, so that we capture all the dollars that is due to the district and we don't lose any money. And this shows the history of the tax rate. 2010, you'll see a dip. The bottom line, I don't have my clicker or my highlighter, but if you look at the non-cap funds, you notice a decrease. Okay, and that's due to the abatement of that $500,000 of bonds. So with the abatement of bonds, our tax rate went down. All right, overall, our tax rate was 1.54. So, again, I stress, I have no idea what next year would be. But one thing we know for sure is that for the 2011 tax extensions, a 1.5% increase can be expected on local property tax revenue. Any questions?
Any questions from the board? Any questions from the public? Is your opportunity? No? No questions or comments? Go ahead, Gina.
I'm curious. I guess I'm confused. So we tax high, but then we give back. So why would we tax high to begin with? Why wouldn't we just tax at where we should?
We don't tax high. We are limited.
Well, we tax at the top as the most we can, right?
We try to get as much extensions as we can.
So you go for the maximum.
Right. Which would be actually a 1.5% because of tax.
That's the most you can do.
It will be. Next year it will be the 1.5% plus whatever percentage it is for new property. So whatever that new property EAV is on the tax rate, that's what we'll get.
And our new property, we're expecting it to be?
The Loyola Center in Burridge. I'm hoping that it will come on, our tax payments.
Did that answer the second half of your question, though? Because it sounded like you had a second half, which was, and then we give back.
Well, we do.
Correct. But the reason, ignore that for 1 second. The reason why you tax at the highest amount is you have to look at this over a long period of time. And the amount that you get this year, so let's say that you had $1 and you tax at 5%, so now you have $1.05. That affects the amount that you can collect from that year forward. So think 15, 20 years out, your decisions today are affecting the amounts that schools, that this school in particular, and boards, can effectively get 20 years out. So if you look at it like, well, why don't we take the amount that we give back and deduct that from the tax percentage levy, which I think is your ultimate question.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
While that mathematically might make sense, 20 years out, that affects the amount that the school can get at that point. So it's better to go after the largest amount that you can, and then ultimately abate some of it back after the fact, than it is to say let's reduce that, because ultimately, as you've seen in some of our past projections, the numbers can cross 2018, 2019 time period. If they do, and the school needed more money at that point, they'd have to go to referendum to raise the percentage of your tax bill allocated to the school. So that's why you always tax at the highest amount, and you'll find that every municipality on your, in this particular case, Cook County tax bill, will always go for the highest amount.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Morabili.
Well, I just heard a second question.
Well, I mean,
wanted
just
to make sure
okay.
that got-
I was,
that got
and I did
clarified
spend
as
some
well.
time researching it today, and I called Catherine, and I'm just like, I just want to understand this. I mean, it just seems like so many people are struggling that it would be the right thing to do is to not raise it as high as we could. I don't know how that would affect them this year or in or the district in 20 years. It's just hard to predict.
Well, it could be. I mean, it could be
Affecting the district
7
2
years
from
out.
now.
Could
I
be
mean,
5 to 7
anything,
years
yeah.
out. I just used 20 years as an example, but it could be 5 to 7 years out,
Okay.
which could be more immediate.
So I think the point is, once we lose it, in order to recoup it, it would require referendum.
And when you say lose it, I mean we still have a $12.7 million fund balance. Is that what you mean? Like lose all that?
No, lose your ability to collect the future tax.
Okay.
Right. Lose the maximum amount.
Okay. Thank you.
Other questions? I'm going to move then that the Board of Education declare the levy hearing closed at 7:20 p.m. Can I have a second, please?
Second. Go ahead.
Pick one.
Take it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it, motion carries, and the tax levy hearing is closed. There are two recommendations. The first is that the Board of Education adopts the 2011 tax levy as presented in the public hearing and authorizes the President and Secretary of the Board to sign all appropriate documents. May I have a motion, please?
Motion. Go ahead, Rick. You can have it.
May I have a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that the Board of Education adopts the 2011 tax levy as presented in the public hearing and authorizes the President and Secretary of the Board to sign all appropriate documents.
Mrs. Hope?
Yes.
Mr. Mobley?
Yes.
Mrs. Nelson?
Yes.
Mrs. O'Halloran?
Yes.
Mr. Wrigley?
Yes.
Mrs. Tegmeyer?
Yes.
Mrs. Sedley?
Yes, the ayes have it and the motion carries. We have a second recommendation too, that the Board of Education adopt a resolution to proportionately reduce each fund where the tax levy exceeds the tax cap limitation. May I have a motion, please? I'll move. May I have a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that the Board of Education adopt a resolution to proportionately reduce each fund where the levy exceeds the tax cap limitation.
Mrs. Hauk?
Yes.
Mr. Mobley?
Yes.
Mrs. Nelson?
Yes.
Mrs. O'Halloran?
Yes.
Mr. Wrigley?
Yes.
Mrs. Tegmeyer?
Yes.
Mrs. Sedley?
Yes, the ayes have it and the motion carries. Erica, is this what we have to sign right now? We have to sign this one right now?
We have to sign it right now. No.
No, okay.
No, they're going to be signed.
Okay, just making sure of that. All right. All right, so we will move on. Additional items to be placed on the agenda. Anyone this evening have anything that they wish to recommend for the agenda? No?
No additional items, but just to bring the board's attention that everyone's been provided with the most recent copy of the Illinois School Code for your leisurely reading.
Open forum. Please.
Martha from Willow Springs. I just want to commend a few teachers that I think have been going above and beyond to really ensure the school's mission of instilling the passionate learning side and empowering them to truly be great people. There are two at the elementary school, and I don't know if all of you know about this, but there was a program in 4th grade high-level math that the teachers really went out of their way to get the kids fired up about. It was called SumDog, and it intertwined technology with math, which every kid loves technology nowadays, and they had this awesome competition where not only were they competing with kids in their own class, but other schools within the state. And it was like a video game, but it was answering math problems in rapid succession. And you would not believe the way these kids took to this. It was a 2-week-long competition, and Pleasantdale, I think, came in second in it, but were ranked first most of the time. It was awesome. I mean, just speaking for my own son, he had his iPod Touch there that he was talking to his friends on. They were all playing the games. Like, they would come over, get all